Oh boy, this is going to be a good one. Hey guys, it's Ryan, and this week we're doing a video on my impressions of Kosmoflot so far in the edition. I've been playing around with it and I have some thoughts and opinions on it that I wanted to put out there to see what other people think. In this video I'll talk about why this is an impressions video and not a faction review, the good, the bad, and what's next for Kosmoflot. If you like what you hear, remember to like the video, and if you want to see more faction impressions, subscribe and maybe I'll turn this into a thing. Now, let's get on to the video. So why is this video a first impressions of Kosmoflot and not a faction review like I usually do? Well, I've played about the same number of games as Military Orders, but with Kosmoflot I feel two things that make it a bit different. One, my general opinions on the army isn't done yet. Unlike Military Orders, where I can bust out what every list needs and how to do it. And two, this army doesn't feel like it's done being stabilized, if you forgive my technical talk. I will talk more about it in a minute, but generally I do software development, so I understand that a living product, and if we think of Kosmoflot as an individual release, it feels like an MVP or minimal viable product. Good to go, but the kinks are still there to be ironed out or beaten out depending on how you find your pleasure. Dirty jokes aside, I'm basically waiting for not a rework for Kosmoflot, but maybe a balance patch if it comes. Great, I'll play some, and if not, I'll live with what we have. I did play Caledonia for most of N4. More on that logic later, but overall I'm not fully there with Kosmoflot, and I want to talk about it, and I want to make some noise, because ultimately I kind of like it, and I kind of want people to see something vaguely positive and balance out some opinions on Kosmoflot. I have played like 7 games with Kosmoflot this edition, and unlike Military Orders, it hasn't clicked yet. Military Order was very much placing games. This now all works. Now let's play some other armies as I get N5 and I get Military Order so I can tell what's good. Kosmoflot, I've done that. I get N5, but I don't think I fully get what's the way to go. I think I'm not close enough yet to go over everything in the faction though. That's the perfect segue onto the format of the video, a good, the bad, and the what's next. That's basically it. I'm going to talk about the good points behind Kosmoflot, what it does well and why I think you should try it, and I'll also talk about what's gone awry so far, and then I'll talk about what's next for me and it on the channel. Now this will not be a video where I just slam Corvus belly for 20 minutes, nor will it be a video where I brown nose them either, but an honest opinion. This is not to say you're not allowed to dislike the state of Ariadna, but in the comments, sure, speak up about what's wrong, but don't bring others down that currently might enjoy Kosmoflot. Just be civil, you all usually are. Now, before we get to the good, I'm going to give the rundown very quickly. I actually do recommend Kosmoflot if you look at the models and go, I want that, wow. Or if you want an army that's cheap and effective and you want to shove a bear where someone's sun doesn't shine, then go for it. It's been fun to play. A challenge, and I like challenges, but it feels like it's not doing me any favours. You could totally win locally with it. We saw it go third in a Spanish satellite of around 25 people, but it won't help you much. It's lacking some tools for that, and if you're a good enough player, you'll probably win with anything like Starco, so standard Infinity stuff. Just know it's doing the best out of the ARD sectorials, but they are all struggling. The first good thing is that Kosmoflot feels indisputably Ariadnan. So what does that mean? Well, in my opinion, most factions get one sectorial that really is just peak X. Like Pano is the firepower and tag faction, and depending on how you cut it, it's either Kestrel or Svalharima. Yujing is heavy infantry and a jack of all trades, and Invincible Army is that to a T. Nomads is probably Bakunin because they are the favourite of the favourite children, and right now Kosmoflot feels like peak Ariadnan due to its really good warbands, skirmishers, and a lot of mimetism on pieces. It's always been described as Vanilla Plus in N4, but in N5 it's a slightly different beast from Vanilla, but it's just Ariadna to its core. It has ticked the fantasy of Ariadna. The warbands are angry, the skirmishers are sneaky, and the high-tech gives the knockout blow. The core warband focus of Caledonia, the professionalism of TAC, and the spirit of the French somewhere in the room. It does what I want an army to do. It takes some fluff, in this case Ariadna's space foot forward, wrapped in the management of ethnic tensions, and gives it a mission, a gun, and a bear, and makes it work wonderfully well. Wallace, Usha, Pavel, Katarans, Rockot, Soldats, Volks, it all feels like it should. Kosmoflot, I think, was and is designed so well, even if it's not as strong these days, but that comes down to individual units rather than faction design. I can imagine it taking actions as a fighting force that's cohesive, even though it looks like it shouldn't. Frontovlik maneuver infantry fighting alongside the lead of Caledonia to fill gaps, with the Volks and Gene Freak Bears fighting to take ground. The Scots hooked me, but Raven Eye and playing them has sold me on them. If you want what Kosmoflot is putting out, there is no better faction to do it with. Mechanically, you might win more elsewhere, but if you want the pride of Ariadna, go for Kosmoflot. To continue that thought, but mechanically so, I think Kosmoflot's warband selection is one of the best in the game. Maybe even better than Bakunin's, but maybe only outdone by Steel Phalanx, who is the warband sectorial. But besides that, I think we are solid. We have the Bear, who is less good these days, but still really good with Immunity Arm, Arm 4, 2 Wounds, Dogged, and PS3 CCWs, and that's just solid. He's a huge threat, and the opponent will want to focus on him rather than our other cracking units. Varangians, who if I call Galwegians in this video, I apologise, but that's how highly I think of them. They are 10 points in over 4 or 5 games. I took them in my league. They killed a Demonist, a bunch of Moderators, Noxes, a Stigmata, Kusanagi, and a Revelant Healer. To be fair, the last 3 were with the help of Dima, but Dima is basically a Varangian with Merichem, and it just goes further to speak to the fact that yes, they are around 10 to 13 points, prone to die, and warbands did get a little worse than N5. But they are still really, really, really good at their job. And this is before we get to like Ermendinos, who are pretty respectable warbands, but also got that booty and our specialist that can get burst 2 in melee and fix things with a bot, and generally is a really effective tool to be used as needed. And given he can smoke and then play the objective in 2 orders, that is an incredibly useful skill, and importantly, a rarer one in N5. Our character warbands might be best in slot for melee outside of JSA, Wallace being damn fine character with CC 27 on the Berserk, inflicting a -3 in CC, and with Natural Born Warrior and Explosive CCW, he can really hold his own as an assault lead. Not only that, he is a list leader with the rare skill of Inspiring Presence, making our Ermine heroes Durox and Kataran as regular. Less than in Caledonia, but solid value. Not to be outdone, we have the very agile Cadian, who is lesser than the Wild Wolfgang, but he has the freedom of wildcarding along some other pieces to find and kill something with Burst 2 and an AP plus T2 CCW. There are some nitpicks I have with him, but he still rocks. Finally, Wolfgang is amazing, and his only flaw is his fire teams. He dominates in CC with the Berserk Martial Arts 3 and a Power CCW -9 alongside his DA CCW. He is just a wildly effective piece with immunity armor, and yeah, you could take him with Rockot, sure, but you could equally just take him solo. Overall, our warbands, oh, and the Kibbervolt, I forgot about him, 10 points, 6/6 moving dog, is also very good. And how could I also forget him or the para-dropping Monsieur Duroc? So yeah, there's so much quality here that can be used to play well, move up and tie down your opponent. Trading a 10-point model into a 60 to 70-point tie is a great way for Kosmoflot to punch up. So the final good point that I really want to dig on is that, kind of like Caledonia before it and like all of Ariadna, is that we are fairly often really cheap at doing things. Not to say nothing's ever overcosted, but there is a good swath of reasonably costed units. Not as much as these days, but a lot of value in a lot of units. Rockots, for example, sure, they do feck all, but they're also costed less than a Fredo from my childhood. They have a lieutenant option, a template option, a camo option, and a paramedic option. The cheapest 5-man ARO team is 56 points with a min-3 heavy rocket launcher with them. If they don't do that, it's still 8 points at their cheapest, or 9 if you go with the baseline SMG version, which if you're taking a couple of, that usually saves you some points. And they square up fairly well, like not awfully, but with templates and grenades, they are slightly more prickly than you think. They're fantastic order and fire team batteries, not to be outdone by our Frontovliks though, whose ARO profiles are also really nicely costed. Not all, though. I think the T2 rifles are a little overcosted, but 19 points for a min-3 heavy rocket launcher with Warhorse and BS-12 is incredibly reasonable in Kosmoflot, and 31 points for an AP sniper and MSV-1 in ARD I think is really good. There are cheaper engineers and paramedics and stuff, but they're still good. The Kybervolk Patrol is another example, alongside Varangians and Dima are also just so cheap that you can just throw them directly towards your opponent and get a huge return on investment with just a little bit of smart play. And once you have your fill of this and the amazing Cataran, you've got multiple high-cost, decent value options like the absolutely glowed-up veteran template and AP-wielding arm sticks, Kosmoflot to fill opponents, or patchers who are incredibly reasonably priced Firebats, the Vokalat, who is fairly priced with a HMG or missile launcher, or you go the whole hog and spend 58 points to get Equippy Mirage 5. Or you spend 5 points more for a tag, a main battle tag, a big stumpy main battle tag. Or you can do what I do and run 3 different active pieces in a list between an unknown Ranger Harris, who can link with the cheapest chips Varangians again, a bear, and a tag in the same list. And that's with a core, 2 SAS, and a spare Galwegian as well. You can pack a list with Kosmoflot and it feels great. You go with the flow, assault is needed. Ah man, the bear's stuck, better Chernabog them. Oh no, there's a hacker. Slap it with the SAS. It's just so cheap and reasonably effective, and it kind of all works. But as you see in a second, it's not always working with you. Ariadna doesn't always want to work with you and kind of needs a kicking or unconventional moves to make it work. Those largely being bears, to be honest, and warbands, but it's a bit unconventional. Now, I'm going to specifically talk about the fire teams in this next bit, because I'm trying my best not to make the same point twice, or maybe even 3 times. But the fire teams in Kosmoflot, with the new purity system, they're not great. They're good enough, but the flaws are kind of there for no reason. My first gripe is that we have bad BS, and that's fine. We had fire teams in N4 to catch up, and reasonable purity to do it with. Or it didn't matter as much those days, but it's much easier and harder to get these bonuses, and a lot of our old techniques to do so is gone. The one I'm still mad about is that Vokalats are no longer pure cores with rockets. It means this BS-12 heavy infantry just doesn't link that great. He probably can go elsewhere, but not really. There are better wildcard options. Wildcards also generally lack any tags, except for the patchers who are rocket coded, maybe making Kosmoflot mildly better than the NA2 wildcards, which is a low bar to get over. But with that, it's a nightmare to get pure still. The Soldat, or iconic main heavy infantry, basically needs to spend another 30 points to get a level 2 fire team and make it vaguely comparable to a Soul Orc, despite it being a good 10 points cheaper. Stranics are good, but basically cost you purity given how thin on purity we are, and we just struggle to get any Harris to level 2 and useful. 2 Padgers or 2 Stranics do work, but both have downsides these days, and it feels weird that we need to rely on wildcards to get good purity. That feels like a design flaw. The Kosmoflot team is also just a mess. Like, it's a redundant fire team that needs reworked. I think pulling in the Soldat and giving it the Kestrel fire team treatment where they all get purity and just let it show off as a namesake fire team should. I can only think of one time I've genuinely actually run this in N4, and I took it to a 200 point tournament where everything was AVA 1. So it was about the only thing I could run. It was fun, and Scots needs some rework, but it could have legs with literally any better purity, and if the Soldat or anything could link in with it, then it could absolutely be fire. To be quick and wrap this up, the Varangian fire team is great with Wallace and Dima, but to try and actually get a gun and a specialist in that Harris is kind of hopeless, and only really works with the Unknown Ranger, which is a bit more of an issue with our wild cards, rather than this pretty amazing Warband fire team. Or maybe it's just an inherent link with Warband fire teams, like, I guess the Morlock fire team doesn't get specialists in Bakunin, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on that approach. Overall, it can work, but it's not nearly up to the snuff of military orders, and the meager changes in N5 did not help us, so expect fire teams to be functional, not wild. To give Corvus Belli credit, before I complain, they did a great job to balance Kosmoflot in N5. They addressed nearly every complaint from N4. Armor 8 Bears gone Volks, apparently. The Unknown Ranger, great. All fantastic changes to N4 Kosmoflot, and they did address some of the big issues in the game. Decharge Fu, Berserk, Smoke, templates on shotguns, all fantastic changes. Then Corvus Belli got to N5ifying Kosmoflot, and then, oh look, a bird. Oh, it'd be better to give Nomads the best vehicle in the game with min -3, dodge -3, and best tax -3. Whoopsie doopsie, it's the best in class for the cheapest possible. And then Kosmoflot is struggling here to just try and play the objective or punch equal to its weight. Snark aside, The changes of N5 were great, but Kosmoflot and Ariadna and the parts of the left just didn't get N5/5, whereas our base attack -3, our bang bombs, our special dice, our albedo, our good turrets, whereas now what is basic tech like MSV or min -6 or whatever. And yeah, you'll say Ariadna is low tech or whatever, and it has. And I have to be honest, I thought excuse was shit in N4 when everyone was saying no smoke for panel. And look, disco ballers. And we didn't get those either. Neither did we get much out of the new martial arts system. All we got was a more expensive Spetsnaz and TAC and T2 on the worst heavy infantry in the game. Now, the way we could get around this is maybe being cheaper or better stats, like more CC, BS, or maybe finally 2 wins. But nothing got cheaper, better in melee, or really better at shooting. We are not fully N5, and this complaint comes with the caveat that I know N5 was rush. They have had said as much. But we've had a balance pass since then, and Wallace got number 2. That's fine, but that does nothing. And USARF, I hear you, but you're out of production, so you kind of don't matter until you're back. I get it. Sometimes as a developer, you got to drop the ball to keep the rest going, but then you got to communicate with the community that, yeah, you've heard it, and there is a timeline beyond medium term, and for all we know, that might only be USARF. We just don't know, and if it is, I probably won't be playing much Ard this edition. I love Ariadna, and this is me meeting my most critical of Corvus Belli. On a whole, I recommend Infinity and the armies I play, and I speak highly of what they do. It's all cracking, but the one main concern that just sits in my mind is that slow, supposedly getting faster approach to changing the game. Like, I don't want changes every 3 months like GW, but 6 months with a pretty, hey, clear, it's coming soon, y'all should look forward to, would be nice. Like, I know rules ain't selling Corvus Belli models, it's the models. So please, Corvus Belli, prove me wrong. And hey, if a meaningful update happens, I'll edit this out the video. Maybe. So this is a different complaint too, that we didn't get updates. And this one is more Ard, just like Pano, in that it has a pigeonhole and it's not allowed to flex. And that is that this is a new edition, but it's the same problems for Kosmoflot. And it's tech and brittleness. Tech is always going to be Ariadna's weak point, but tech has changed since N3, and this one has the most capacity to change with the plot going forward. Kosmoflot was a huge step up in tech, as was Kestrel for Pano, but some of that back filters that happened with the edition change or ISS update bumping the rest of Yujing just didn't have. And it was great to see a tag in Ariadna in N4, 2 wins, Silhouette 2 heavy infantry, even if it was transmutation. Some MSV was nice if it also didn't get taken away. It's nice to have this faction identity as being low tech, but it fixes nothing in how we deal with min -6. Like, how do we deal with tags outside of shooting? How do we deal with MSV2 units rolling our min -3 and smoke off the table? Warbands, you might yell, surprise attack 2. Tell me, how does a Galwegian affect a GoPod? How does a Galwegian kill a flyer, any Ariadna unit, which is the main conceptual issue I'm having? We generally also need to get there, and smoke only gets you so far. I've actually found Ariadna so much harder than Pano because we are so dependent on positioning and getting it so right, or else we can just get into an unrecoverable state. The only saving grace is that we don't give a shit about hacking. Well, except this is a little bit of a skill issue, and I am thinking about what I do in military orders and applying it here, except, you know, without the whole hackable nonsense. I know it's not 1-to-1, but it's close. But it doesn't change the math of us taking on min -6 on 6s or 7s, and hoping we can affect the big boys. Our stats and skills are so sparse that it's not worth it sometimes. I'm going to steal a phrase here. Ard lacks a 14-14-14 unit, a BS 14, Fizz 14, and Whip 14 unit like the Asiwaria, the Crux, or something Yujing based. I don't really know how we'd get that power space, but Ard is content to commit war crimes against humanity and the gods for the Vokalats and Bears. One would imagine some new war crime between man and antipode, or just stealing things like, whoops, we stole and modified a bunch of Evader and Brigada armor during Crimson Stone. Maybe Ariadna finally develops native visors like Corvus Belli. Just give us something. Min -6 and hidden deployment is the easiest, as well as surprise attack -6. The more viral and mines is great. Do more of that. Break the tech barrier or let us have some juicy stats and we will be so much there. A BS 14 or 2 wounds soldat would slap. The Vokalat with 2 wounds or BS 13 would slap. A MSV burst 4 gun would kill in Kosmoflot. Pavel with hidden deployment could be a viable model. You're nearly there, Corvus Belli. I believe you can do it. Alright, let's talk about my main gripe for Ard. This is still the same edition, the new edition, same problems, but Ard and Kosmoflot are really brittle, and everyone knew this before the Bears got nerfed, and we all warned of this. But let's put it this way, no one ran double soldats. And yes, Bears and total immunity are tough, but here's the thing, just fucking shoot them. They die eventually. Weight of dice is the thing that kills them. It's why the Vokalat was ultimately not that great an ARO piece. Or just smokers. We can't see through it. But outside that, we're really brittle. Our 40-point heavy infantry is 1.5 wounds, which means he takes 2 wounds and then is removed from play. My 26-point knight, or orc, takes 2 wounds and can be recovered. Unconscious, but he's recoverable. With lower BS and stats generally, we are less likely to win the face-to-face roll, and more likely to take a losing situation and potentially lose a wound, which is much more serious for 95% of our outside of our dogs and 2 wounds or more, and can easily fail forward. We do have Dogged that the design for troopers who are essentially failing forward or sticking around on grit, but when it's the troopers that feel and price like they should be 2 wounds like Vokalats, Soldats, Minutemen, or heavy infantry, it's not feeling good. Maybe we should be bumping this up with Dogged or 2 wounds, because these days we're not as cheap as we once were. We're also much less comparably durable to an orc, a Zuyong, or any basic bitch heavy infantry. Really, the problem is that we have worse stats, so we fail more. Berserk and Smoke used to essentially get around this, then that changed. We then compound that with the critical pieces only having 1.5 wounds or transmutation, so that any wounds they take are far more damaging on our point sinks. Then it's easier to snowball into failure. If we got those stat bumps or broke the 2 wound barrier on some things, I probably would feel better. This last one is ultimately the most manageable, but it feels rough when I'm playing literally any other faction. And the old, oh, we ain't hackable, so it's fine, isn't really holding up anymore when 4 of the heavy infantry we have are now hackable, and we have no E-War to help them or our tag. We need to rethink on what Ariadna is allowed to do and relax it. Either we need to be moving some of this down to medium infantry, or cutting points or general durability bump that makes it more comparable to the N5 heavy infantry, who all got so much better and cheaper. Hopefully you got through that slight negativity. I do really like Kosmoflot, and I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't. And like I said earlier, if you are vibing with Kosmoflot and the models, I do recommend it. Army rules can change, but a faction style and theme is far more immutable. So what's next for Kosmoflot on the channel and in general? Well, I will probably do a faction guide once any updates are coming to Ariadna, or any substantial one comes. Say maybe at a Gen Con, Adepticon, or maybe when USAR finally gets updated. But I have no knowledge of what or when that will be, and if it looks like it isn't coming, I'll probably just sit down, do the video, and move on, and let it catch some stray updates throughout the edition, like military orders and Tunguska of N4. A purchase guide for Kosmoflot will be coming, as, to be honest, I think we can safely make recommendations on what is good buys for Kosmoflot at this time, and it will probably be the next video I do on the channel, and we'll follow a similar structure to the military order one and talk about prices, but we'll have a much more focus on the recommendations nice to have and just not to get, as with Kosmoflot there is some stinkers. Finally, for the channel, the Highland Brawl 3 is happening this year around the end of August, I think. Well, I would be mad for doing so, but I will be taking Kosmoflot to that, which is Frostbite, Beepong, and Provisions, which is certainly a lineup. If I do well enough or particularly weird stuff happens, I might do a battle report and I'll see if I really nail the faction. Hell, I might even do the guide after that. There is another tournament in September I won't be going to, but then another one in November that I might look into, but I have no idea what faction at this time. That might be the start of my Tunguska journey for the edition, who knows. Hopefully I just don't go 0-3 with Kosmoflot at the next one, because I'm not sure, honestly. I've only run military orders at tournaments, so let's try something new. So with that was my video on my N5 impressions of Kosmoflot so far. The good, the bad, and the what's next. Hopefully it inspired you to look at the army, or maybe it dissuaded you from a purchase you might not have liked. Let me know in the comments below. And if you like the video, remember to like it below as well. And if you want to see more, remember to subscribe for more. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching.